This episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Guys, if you don't know what Liquid IV is, well, buckle up because I'm going to throw you a game changer. Liquid IV is a hydration multiplier that not only tastes great, but is a non-GMO electrolyte drink mix. Powered by cellular transport technology to deliver hydration to the body faster and more efficiently than water can just do alone. One stick contains 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks with 5 essential vitamins. Now, I pride myself on telling you about things that I either already like or just use in my everyday life, and I have to say, I've actually been a fan of Liquid IV for a long time now. I use it for everything from, just long runs to stay in shape, all those late nights with those after hours, or just when I'm feeling a little dehydrated. I turn to it so it could just, my God, set me straight, make me feel like $1,000,000 again, and just get me ready for the day. So please head on over to their website. That's liquid-iv.com to check out their amazing line of products. And get this, when you use promo code Art of the Beholder, all one word, you'll get 20% off your order. Now, if you need a little direction on where to start, I recommend lemon lime. Guys, you're going to love it, won't be disappointed. So please give it a shot and get more fuel for life's adventures. Now, back to the show. Greetings and salutations, all you beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of Art of the Beholder, a show dedicated to all things eclectic in the world of art, where we do deep dives into deep cuts and help you understand why damn things matter. I'm your host, Novo and today we're going to be talking about art in painting, sculpture, and writing, focusing on British-born surrealist Leonora Carrington. To hash things out, we're once again joined by our favorite lady candlestick, and that is Miss Alexandra Parsons of Alexander_Parsons.com. Welcome back, Miss Parsons.
Very excited to be back, and thank you for having me.
As always, we love having you back to talk shop, and we're doing it again. We're championing some of the women in history, artistic leaders that we don't hear enough about. And I'm so excited that you brought this to our doorstep again. And I understand you may gush a little bit. And I have questions for you.
Yes, go for it.
But before we get there, let's tell the good people why. Why are we talking about Miss Leonora Carrington today? And that is because she was one of the last connective tissues to the movement that was surrealism. And we here at NDP and definitely on our show AOTB, we fucking love surrealism. Like it is rooted in almost everything we like to cover and also make. I a lot of like my cover art to books are very surreal, things like that. So it is very much a part of our family here. But what made Miss Carrington special was she was not only one of the last surviving members of the movement that was surrealism, but she was also one of the first for the needs of feminism, which I thought was amazing to understand her history and how far we've come when we actually gleam into the past and try to understand our present again and look to the future as always. And what was so fascinating about her history is that she kind of created a hybrid of those two ideologies, surrealism and feminism. So there is a lot to discuss today. But before we do, of course, all you guys need a little background. So the background today, though, is going to be short and sweet because Miss Carrington's history as an artist, and for you to really understand who she is and how impactful she was and why she has a legacy, really does, we don't dig too much into the bio in the discussion section of these pieces, but today it is really needed. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Carrington was actually born Mary Leonora Carrington on April 6th, 1917, in Clayton Green, Corley, Lancashire, England. And she lived to be 94 and passed just in 2011 on May 25th. To this day, she has had a staggering 85 art gallery exhibitions in her name, showing her beautiful, wonderful, mystic pieces and sculptures and everything that is Miss Leonora Carrington. Now, before we can really hash it out, guys, we're going to take a little break. We'll be right back. We're going to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by short story Post Meridium. Follow Entropy Sessions character Lydia, one of the lead madams of an anonymous house, as she manages the ups and downs of a very unique hospitality market, one that specializes in the most sinful of pleasures only the underbelly of society can really offer. You can find Post Meridium on Amazon in all major ebook formats, available now. Now back to the show. All right, Miss Parsons, it is time to do the damn thing, and I want to start the conversation with a question for you. You have stated to me, you have said that this may be your new favorite artist of all time.
I did say that, didn't I?
Why? Why is that? What changed?
Well, it's still, I mean, in this genre especially, but she's just so fucking weird. Like her artwork is so
In
cool.
a good way.
And no, in the best way possible. In the I don't give a fuck, I'm going to paint whatever comes to like my psyche, and I
Yeah.
don't care if you like it or not. She's just an incredible woman. Like before I knew more about her, I was diving a lot into just like the visual aspects of her artwork, and then I started to watch some documentaries and like, oh wow, she lived a really long life.
Yeah.
She just constantly like followed her own bliss, and I think that really,
Oh, I like that.
yeah, she really just didn't, it took her to doors. Like the true meaning of following your bliss is like it will open up doors that might be really difficult, but you still have to go through them, and they might be really great, but you have to go through it, you have to follow, and she did that. But it reflects all in her artwork. I love how dreamlike it is, and I think I am very attracted to a lot of paintings that have that magical realism or magical surrealism in it. And I know Hilma F. Clint is my favorite artist, but she's just more of an abstract expressionism work.
True.
You're not really seeing figures; they're more dreamlike in shapes and spiritual. This has like this metamorphosis happening in her work that really engages the psyche. So that's kind of like why she's one of my favorite artists right now.
Oh, I love what a perfect answer. And I'm glad you brought up off Clint, because I feel like the more I was doing my homework for the show, Carrington's background and looking at her pieces, I feel like this piece kind of is a spiritual successor to the Hilma off Clint piece we did together,
Mm-hmm.
because there are similarities. There's definitely overlap, especially with that magical realism, and there's a mythos to kind of her work and her life, and that's probably a good segue to kind of talk a little deeper about her life. And I wanted to start the conversation with something that you hinted at, and I think we need to dig into a little deeper, and that is her rebelliousness.
Yeah.
I found that so intriguing, because especially in the era she grew up in, this was kind of the first, this was kind of the first of its kind, is to have a woman in this kind of upbringing really say no to a lot of what was offered to her. She broke the rules, she broke the mold, she was a rebel, and because of that broke down just so many barriers for, not only artists, but I would say women themselves, right? As a group, as a force to be reckoned with, especially with feminism and the rights that you guys so rightfully deserve and all this stuff. And I feel like this was this weird point in history where I saw the beginnings of a lot of those things that we really cherish to this day, and we continue to champion. And I thought it was so fascinating to see her relationship with someone like Max Ernst, and their subsequent breakup only because of the war, and then that created this. This is pure speculation, but do you think her psychotic break was because of her breakup with Max Ernst?
From what I researched on, and what one of her relatives who did a lot of like got to know her and wrote a couple books about her, he got arrested twice, and like the first time he got arrested, they were living in like the south of France or something, and then that was okay, like that was fine, he got back. And then the second time he got arrested, because he was a part of France that was the Fifi, which is still considered like during World War II, it was very still French occupied. So because Max Ernst was a German, they like suspected that maybe he was involved with the Nazis, and he wasn't. He very was not. And then the second time he got arrested, he got put in a, I don't know if it was a camp or some prison, and German prison or French prison, and that's when she just was like, apparently her words were, she was just walking aimlessly through the house, just kind of not showing what she was going to do. And she was really young, like she was in her
Right.
early 20s then. So a lot of it had to do with, yeah, like he wasn't there, even though she was fiercely independent. She just didn't know what she was going to do. She didn't know if he was going to live or die. She didn't know if she was going to live or die. So that was kind of like, her artwork was there, like all of that is like crumbling underneath your feet. So I think like anytime there's war, there's repercussions, and it really affects your entire being. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that psychotic break really played into who she became as an artist, obviously. And we should note that if you don't know the history, this breakup was circumstantial. It wasn't like they had an internal conflict, no one cheated on the other person. It was literally the war tore them apart from each other, and they just never got to reconcile. And she went off to, yeah, she had to go through when she had her psychotic break, she had to go through these, sanatoriums, or, these psych wards.
And
And
that's when they were experimenting on electroshock therapy. And like, I think the people that she didn't know she was going to get put in there, like she thought she was going to go somewhere that was like, for her to get away. And then her people around her, like basically were like, oh, okay, well, we're going to put you here. And then somehow she escaped. We don't really know the story of how she escaped, but somehow she escaped. And, but she was in Madrid, right?
yeah, it was something like that, and that's how she met someone, and they got married by, just a means of convenience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she wanted to flee. Again, it was, going back to that sub thesis of rebelliousness, breaking the rules. She was like, well, I don't want to I don't want to do this awful live in this awful existence anymore. I want to break free. And part of that was, I'm going to have to kind of manipulate the system, so that she could find refuge in a different country, and that eventually became Mexico for her. Even though she divorced this man.
He was a duke. I think he was like a duke of, or some type of diplomat in Mexico.
Right.
And from what I read or what I listened to is that they met at a bar because she was alone. She didn't know what she was going to do. She had no money. She had to get out. She escaped like got out of the insane asylum, and she had no friends. And then she met this guy at the bar, and he told her story, just like out of fate, out of
Yeah.
pure.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
that's what seems like kept happening to her. Is she just, because she was just authentically rebellious? It wasn't like she was trying to be rebellious for rebellious sake. She just authentically was like, don't fit in. I don't feel comfortable. I have to keep going. And she went with him. I think they were at a bar in Lisbon. Like, she left Madrid and she went to Lisbon. Then she told her a story, and he was telling her story and all that stuff. And he was like, listen, I have an idea. Why don't you marry me and we'll go to Mexico?
Yeah, it was just like, you marry me, and then on paper it looks like, okay, well, she has to have immunity because she's the wife of a diplomat. We'll get asylum in Mexico. He probably said that in the pitch. We'll divorce. You get to start over, and that's
Probably.
exactly what happened.
They did actually care for each other, though, from what I read and listened to. It was really, really interesting. Did you read about how she did see Max Ernst like one more time? So she was in Lisbon going to get this arrangement. They were waiting to get passage they were going to go to New York and then go up to America, and then from America drive to Mexico. So while they were in Lisbon, who does she see across from this, it's like
Oh
a little cove?
shit! It was Max.
She sees Max, and he is with Peggy Guggenheim,
Right.
who was,
That's
and
crazy too. That part of the story.
it is wild. And then they meet, and like she didn't know if he was alive or dead, and it was there. I've heard two different ones. I heard two different kind of
And he had
things.
already moved on by then, right? That's why they never really reconciled. Was he was married to Guggenheim?
He was about to be, yeah, he was going to be, or he was about to be, out of convenience too. So they were both kind of like, listen, like they still love each other. It wasn't like, but this was the only way that he can get out of Europe, and go to America. And it was same thing for her. And they
Like
kind of like,
star-crossed lovers that just didn't. Life kept them apart. It's not
yeah,
that they didn't want it. It
I
just
think
happenstance.
they saw each other again, and like when they were in New York, that was an opportunity for them to maybe be together, but that's not. She knew that her story wasn't done. She had to keep going because the surrealist movement was really happening in New York, and that's where it started to flourish. So she could have kept going there and become more and more successful, but she again followed her story and her mythos, and
She's no one's muse. She said it
that's
herself.
exactly, yeah. I love that about her. Oh,
She's like, "I'm no one's muse. I
oh
do
my
my own
god.
thing."
I'm so glad
Yeah.
you said that.
Because and that's why we see her create movements like the women's liberation movement in Mexico.
Mexico in itself is from what, you had Frida Kahlo there, which you could see a lot of her work reflecting a very similarity. And Mexico in itself is a very surreal place. There are a lot of people who say, I've never been, but people and artists are like, it's one of the most surreal places in the world, which I'm kind of like, I want to go now. This community that got built off of it, she became one of the most successful living surrealist artists in Mexico. And it kind of was one of those things I think that became labeled on her. I don't know if I didn't really hear or read that she was somebody that was like, I am a strong feminist. Cause or maybe you read something, maybe you read something a little opposite of what I read, but I didn't get a lot of information on like that movement, because I know that she never really felt like, she always was kind of an outsider even in Mexico, but and even in the surreal movement she still felt like still didn't, like, she didn't
Like
read the
belong kind of
yeah,
thing.
belong. She was just always like
Severely?
severely like herself, like just
Yeah.
authentic to herself.
Yeah,
um
she was always true to herself. She was and that kind of goes back to like I'm no one's muse.
I think that's a true feminist in a way.
Yeah.
Without, I think that's why she got like into that group, and people were really drawn to her and her artwork, and she was inspired by Mexico, and even though she was always a little bit of outsider, it was her home. Like, she never left. Like, that was where her
Yep.
journey.
And she did remarry there too.
She did.
Chicky or something. It
Chicky
was a
something, and like she had two kids with him, and
So she found love again,
mhm.
and the rest, as they say, is history. She went on to, she became very famous and very recognized, not only for the movement, but for her art, her sculpture, her writing. And she eventually won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Women's Caucus of Art. And this was given to her at a convention in New York in 1986. Now, for the good people that don't know her work, and that's probably going to be most of the people listening right now, I would say 99% of you guys listening are probably like, who? Who's this? Who's
Yeah.
Leonora Carrington? So, for the good people that don't know, let's give them a primer first. I always like to give a primer before we start talking about the art itself. So, if you were to put it into the simplest terms, a nutshell,
Mhm.
how would you describe her pieces?
So, do you like the little sound effect?
Oh man.
I would say, how would I describe her painting? So, Leonora Carrington, her work involves the psyche that transforms like mythos and mythology and symbolism, and they're very much, you can't really analyze her work. There's a lot of feeling behind it,
Hmm.
and you're seeing a lot of it's fantastical creatures, animal hybrids that you're going to consistently see in her artwork. It's very much connected to nature and the dream world. That's basically, if you're going to be prepared to kind of, if you're going to go through and see her artwork, be prepared to have an open mind and let your imagination go with it and your feelings go with it without judgment. Do not try to analyze it or analyze her. Her artwork is very much a form of like, it's a very interesting dream world. Like, I had some really weird dreams last night.
Hmm.
I woke up kind of feeling uncomfortable, and I think like that's you might feel that way looking at her artwork, but that's some of it might really call to you.
And from a technical perspective, so technical skills, she was okay with not making things look hyper realistic too, and I think that really added to the dreamlike essence of her pieces. Because her pieces were pretty flat, very 2D. There wasn't a lot of there was the attempt to create three dimensions in her pieces, but it wasn't the highlight. It wasn't the focus, and I think that was by design. I bet she could have been much more technical, but she didn't want to be.
Mhm.
And it creates this extension to the dreamlike surrealism that she really captured well. And then on a color theory note, we see a little of everything. We see a lot of, I would say she's anchored by a lot of earth tones, a lot
Mhm.
of neutrals, but she's okay throwing in the colds and hots and, kind of whatever is striking her fancy. And then to bring it all together, to me, like when I just like kind of flip through her pieces, which I'm doing right
Me
now with all
too.
my little Google tabs,
Yeah.
is there is a darkness I cannot quite explain about her pieces. And that's why we wanted to give you guys kind of the extended bio for this piece, because things like she went through so fucking much, like
Mhm.
going to the psych ward, losing her lover, having to find asylum in a country that she was not born in. And I feel like I see it in her pieces. And the word that kept popping in my mind over and over and over again is the macabre. There is an essence of not straight horror. There's a difference between horror and the macabre. Macabre is like when you say this is kind of macabre, like Edgar Allan Poe is macabre. Like there's a darkness to it.
That's probably
It
why I
definitely,
like it.
yeah, it fringes on horror, but it's not horror like we have come to get used to horror. It's not paintings that are horrific, like the black paintings or something like that, where these are dark and mystical, and there's hints of evil afoot, supernatural elements. There's pain, there's dread, there's I wouldn't say an anger, but there is an overwhelming sadness to her pieces that can really speak, to your point. I think these pieces can really speak to us in different ways, and it's probably going to speak to you on that end of the spectrum. You're not you're not going to be ready to run a marathon after looking at her work.
No, yeah, it's very much the occult and alchemic practices. You'll see that in her work, which is always when you hear about the occult, there's that mystery behind it. And she's like she's even quoted that she's still a mystery to herself,
Mm,
even in old age. Like she's still discovering things about herself. So I think a lot of her paintings are an exploration of her own feelings. So maybe that's why she was constantly saying, "Don't analyze my work." Like her words,
right.
like "Don't." She was telling her relative that was interviewing her and talking to her, like, "Don't. You're doing it wrong. Like, don't analyze my stuff. You have to. It's a feeling." And I'm like, man, that's different.
And she was we can't forget to mention that she was also a sculptor and a writer. And before we talk about the writing, the sculpting to me had, and this is what I was gonna hint at in our pre-show interview, is we did a show on Tim Burton
Yes,
recently.
yes, we did.
Click here, and I feel like when I would look at her sculptures, I would see a lot of the claymation in Tim Burton's
Oh,
work.
you're right.
Like the crocodile looks like kind of the head of, kind of a Frankenweenie, or like the sandworms from Beetlejuice. I'm like, Leonora Carrington must have inspired Tim
Well,
Burton to
I
create some
guess
of his monsters
he
and
was very
creatures.
he was very inspired by wasn't he inspired by Max Ernst? Because Tim Burton was inspired by, like, German expressionism, like, all that weird architectural work with, like, the doorways being morphed and shaped and all that stuff, so he was really into, like, the German artwork, and then Max Ernst is German, and so that makes actually that's a really
Makes us,
great
yeah, it makes a lot of
connection.
sense.
Yeah, it's a great connection, I didn't even, realize that.
So, again, with themes of magical realism, myth, alchemy, and symbolism, we, instead of going through every single piece that she's ever made, guys, we're not going to do that today. It's not one of those shows. I'm going to list her pieces.
Mhm.
I urge you guys to check them out, on Google, what have you. But we're gonna probably just hand select a few to go into stuff that spoke to us. Though paintings include self-portrait, or it's often dubbed Inn of the Dawn Horse. That's 1936 to 1937. The Horses of Lord Candlestick, 1938. The Meal of Lord Candlestick, 1938. Portrait of Max Ernst, 1939. The Temptation of St. Anthony, 1945. The Kitchen Garden on the Yacht, 1946. The Giantess, or The Guardian of the Egg, 1947. The Old Maids, 1947. The Magical World of the Mayans, 1963 to 1964. The Bird Bath, 1974. The Memory Tower, 1995. And a piece I'm absolutely going to butcher. We'll call it The Gato in 2009.
Oh, the gato? I mean, I think that means the cat, right?
The cat. Well,
The
it's like
cat. Oh, it's like
Gato
yeah.
Maquia, but we'll probably we'll call it Gato. And then we'll talk a little bit about her sculpture work and then some of the writings here in a minute. Before we do, what were some of the pieces that really spoke to you?
Well, the first one that I fell in love with was like the ghost painting. It's not on our list. It's
Do
a
you know the
paint.
name of it?
I think it's just called The Ghost. Hold on, let me look it up real quick. I just had it up and like, oh, it's called The Ancestor. That's what it's called. It is, for those, you can look it up for those who are wondering. It has, believe
Yeah,
it's
the
oil.
macabre.
Yeah, it's the
More
macabre.
macabre.
More macabre. It's just a picture of like a ghost holding a rose on top of like a spherical kind of image, spherical shape with these like four spider monkeys. They look like spider monkeys with black eyes, and there looks like a no moon and a full moon on each corner, which kind of that reminds me of Hilma F. Clint right there.
So again, yeah, not scary. It's not scary per se. Like a horror like painting in the style of horror would be kind of, it would make you feel creepy or creeped out. A little scared, a little unease. Where this one just is like, who hurt you? Like I don't know. When I look at her pieces that are like this, I'm like, this poor tortured soul.
That's interesting. It's like I feel when I look at it, I feel it's like just a dark romanticism, like Edgar Allan Poe, like a little bit, like you said, the macabre. The monkeys, the spider monkeys, creep me out more than the ghosts in the circle. But then the more I look at it, like I want to analyze it, and it does remind me. Is this? Did she paint this? I didn't do enough research on this one, but it looks like I feel like she painted this maybe after her Sinum time, because it looks like she's kind of stuck between this world. But this also, it says the ancestors, so I feel like it's a she had to like give like basically bury versions of herself. Like she was called Prim when she was younger in
Mm.
Lancaster, and like her dad basically told her like either at one point like you can either you have to, if you don't come back, if you leave now, like you're never coming back, you're gonna die penniless in the shitter, just like every artist. And she still left. And even when she had multiple times to go back to her home in Lancaster when she was like abandoned and had nowhere to go during the war, and she still decided not to because it wasn't an option. She couldn't be emotionally stifled. Her art couldn't be stifled. She couldn't be somewhere where she couldn't be who she is. And I understand that as an artist.
Maybe that's why you like her so much, or feel like this may be my favorite artist of all time, is so you see yourself in her.
Maybe, yeah. I don't, I get worried about thinking like that because I don't want levels of narcissism to seep into my mind. But like,
Well,
I know, but that's just me being
I wouldn't
over.
say it's narcissism. I mean, you're going to, just because you identify, there's definitely a hard line between pure narcissism and just being like, okay, this is me, and like this
Yeah,
is a spiritual successor to who I am as an artist, kind of a thing.
yeah. That's very true. But yeah, I do relate to her, and I guess you're right in a way where like but I'm constantly vocalizing myself to my family and being like, if you don't like who I am, this is who I am, then you could kiss my ass.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not going to pretend. I promised myself a long time ago, I'm not going to pretend to be somebody else just to make you guys happy. They're like, okay, like, cause I'll just, they kind of accept it, but they get
Well, they have to, family's family. You can pick your friends, you can't pick your family, and they gotta accept you for who you are,
yeah.
not what they want you to be. There's our PSA,
Yeah.
guys.
I also think this painting, the ancestor, is very comical. It's charming and comical. Like that's kind of
Hmm,
how I look at it. There is a seriousness
interesting.
to it, but she also was a kind of a funny person. Like she had a lot of humor in her paintings. It wasn't she didn't want you to look at it with dread. She was just kind of like, well, why not? Like I think it was she said something. There's one painting where it has like three heads.
The Temptation of Saint Anthony is
That's it.
biblical.
That's the one I'm talking about. It's the only one that was like referenced that was like a to the
A lot of
actual.
people have made, for the record, a lot of other artists have painted the Temptation of Saint Anthony. So, like when you pull that up, you're going to see a lot of different artists' work.
Yeah, that's true. And she said something like, "People might ask why there's three heads in there," and I just said, "Why not?" Like
I don't
that's
know.
just kind of how, yeah, that's kind of how she is. She's like,
I don't
"Well,
know.
yeah," she doesn't know. She's like, "Why not? I'm just going to do it." Like I could do it's, and I think we talked about this. Somebody else, another artist, brought this up. We were talking about this last time. He's not an artist; it's the producer we were talking about. He always wears like the red and blue glasses. He's still alive. Uh,
Producer of what?
he produced like Beastie Boys and all those.
Oh, Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin was just saying like you have to just create it and not worry about the outcome. And like that's kind
Well,
of
or he says it. Another way he says it is the audience always comes last. You make your work for yourself,
yeah,
and if you put it out in the world, if you want to sell it, then your audience, they may, you could build an audience, but you shouldn't make the work based on the audience alone. They should really come last.
yeah,
It should just be another diary entry.
yeah. There you go. I feel like that's just how she is with her work.
Oh, she epitomizes that. It's clearly like, and she said it. She famously said, "I, I never thought in a million years." I'm paraphrasing, obviously. I never thought in a million years, like my work was made for myself. I never really made it to be exhibited or to be sold or to anything, but it just kind of happened. People wanted it. It happened. The pieces that spoke to me include definitely Portrait of Max Ernst,
Mm,
because I think this may surprise you. It actually has to do with what he's wearing. I felt like that was,
I do love that. I do
yeah,
love.
it's like this big fluffy red, I don't even know exactly
I mean,
how to
either
describe it.
looks like a fox, like a weird, like a
Yeah, like if you were to wear fur, if you were to wear a fur coat or something, it's like a fur onesie. And I feel like that was a little bit of a doorway, a little
mhm.
bit of a window into her skill that she didn't always tap into. Like this was very three-dimensional. Like I feel like you could reach out and touch it. It
Yeah,
looks
you're
so
right.
fluffy and soft and things like that. And I felt like,
Icicles on the horse. Look, yeah, you're right.
yeah, I think the that is something we should tell the good people is there's a motif that can be seen on all of her work, and that is the symbolism. That is the symbol that is the horse,
Yeah.
and we see horses all throughout her pieces. And I wanted to take a minute to actually dedicate this entire episode to my father. My
Oh,
father
that's
is,
sweet.
I usually talk about my mom a lot
You
on these
do.
shows,
Yeah, yeah.
but I would not be the artist I am today without my father as well. And my father loves animals, but
Mhm.
particularly horses. He has owned he's owned a number of horses. He still owns horses to this day. And he also, if you ever find him on Facebook, he has a horse of the month that he likes to highlight and gush about and send love out into the world with. It's very sweet,
That's so cute. I didn't
isn't
know
that? Yeah,
anything. I did not I
I
love that you're
know. This is
sharing this.
it's so this well, as soon as I saw all the imagery of the horses and the dreamlike essence of horses, I thought of my dad immediately. My mom is a painter, and she has painted horses for my dad as gifts and things like that. And it just I was like, yeah, I was like, I don't dedicate pieces to my dad enough. So dad, this one's for you. The other piece that really, really, I mean, the most obvious thing that I think will speak to everyone. I feel like if you're going to start anywhere, start with the magical world of the Mayans, because this is like larger than life. This clearly took a long time to create. There is so much going on. There's so much detail, earth tones, hots, just fantastical imagery, beautiful scenery. Just so there's, this is fucking Mordor. This is like like Mount Doom practically on a canvas, and it's so huge that I definitely urge you to start there and then really get into her pieces. But I would say the number one. So of those of I had three main ones that really spoke to me, but the number one, I may surprise you, was the Giantess, the Guardian of the
Oh,
Egg.
that's like the main one that I had up. That's
Yeah, the
gorgeous.
Giantess is, I think, going back to our sub thesis of feminism, I love that she said to the world, "Us women are giants. The rest of you are mere mortals," and that's because we can reproduce. We have the power to make life. I found this piece so fascinating and so impactful. That there was so much said with so little. I think I love when art does that. Poets are great at this. They can make the most impactful thing to you as the viewer, the audience, with so little. And I feel like this painting was life changing with so little detail.
Yeah, when you asked me to describe her painting, the first question, that's the kind I was staring at this one while I was talking
Ah,
about it. The birds and the small head and like this giant woman and all these little creatures below it. And I just love the teal, like the turquoise in the background. She did a lot of like her painting. I think she did a lot of that eggshell reminiscent
yeah,
of like the eggshell
yeah.
painting. So that's where you get that glow
Even the
from.
shape of the giantess is a big egg. She's holding an egg, in her
Oh, there it
hands.
is. I
But
see
she
it.
is she's
Oh.
kind of an egg. Her as a creature, this giant, is an egg.
Can you see it's a little blurry, but in between the red part, there's like these little it almost looks like hieroglyphic
Yeah.
like images, like Egyptian or something. I can't
Again, I
tell.
create I create life, and this is the life cycle kind of thing.
Ah, okay. That's what that and the birds are coming out through this such a beautiful painting.
This one is great.
The
This one
color
really
the
spoke to
color
me.
theory is gorgeous. Like the ombres of it and the way the sky goes. Like you can like decorate your whole house with this color.
Guys, check it out, in other words. Now, before we get out of here, we do want to give a little love to some of the other things that she created, and that includes some of her sculpture work. The most famous one is what we referenced with the Tim Burton analogies, and that's "How doth the little crocodile." And if you pull that one up, you will see how Tim Burton was clearly inspired by a lot of her art and some of the pieces he's made. Auxiliary work include novel writing. A lot of them have non-English titles, guys. So I'm gonna I'm gonna try my best on the first one, and then I'm gonna probably skip a few, and then focus on again the highlights. Le Monsieur de la Pio in 1938 with illustrations by Max Ernst. Down Below in 1944. I think this is a big one because this actually chronicles her life. It's like a mini memoir or autobiography. This chronicles her life when she was in the insane asylum and what she went through and the atrocities that took place when she was living through that part of her life. And then other works include The Oval Lady, which is surreal stories made in 1975. Most people point to this next one, The Hearing Trumpet, in 1976. This is historically the earliest, from what we can find, the earliest depictions of gender identity that we can find in literature, I think, ever. So, obviously we are grappling with a lot of gender identity issues now, and people coming to terms with all the fluidity, the non-binary, the trans, all of that
Mhm.
stuff. Well, we wouldn't even have had that conversation if it wasn't for something like The Hearing Trumpet in
I
1976.
gotta read this. This is like I didn't even realize that.
And The Stone Door in 1977, The Seventh Horse and Other Tales 1988, The House of Fear 1988, The Debutante and Other Stories 2017, and The Milk of Dreams. That's another big one, 2017. And guys, we're not going to spend a ton of time on these, but check them out. They are very fascinating in their own right. The history around them is truly fascinating, and I think you guys will get a lot out of them.
Mhm.
And again, we wouldn't really have again, I think we take for granted, before we tie a bow on this bee and get into conclusions, I think we take for granted all of the trailblazers that came before us to give us what we have today. And I realized that Leonora Carrington was one of them.
She's very, very much underrated. We don't hear about her enough. I think we're going to start hearing more and more about her. Was looking up podcasts and people have talked about her, and there wasn't a lot, mainly, but
that's where we come in.
That's where we come in. We need to keep researching and acknowledging artists that have been kind of just, especially female artists that have been kind of pushed to the side, because it's such a man's world, the surrealist movement. Even that, all of the art world was like a boys' club, and you're gonna see that throughout most of like society. Not to bring up like the Barbie movie, but I finally watched it, and that was like I totally got it. I was like, oh, this is a feminist movie. I was like, this it is a boys' club. It's a cowboys world. I don't hate
the Mojo Dojo.
I am.
I
Oh my
always
god,
like
I'm
at
not. I'm some.
what I call my house now.
It's
Mojo
oh god,
Dojo.
it's and it was a great. It's a great analogy or a connection to that. So she paved the way for a lot of art. She actually, looking at her work, I'm going to be very honest, like, because I do more abstract work with like shapes and color theory and stuff, but I really want to dabble into some surrealists and kind of be a little brave. I've always been worried that I can't do that. I can't create those shapes. I'm like, well, why can't you? So I kind of want to do that for myself and try to maybe.
Now you have to. You put it in the universe.
Put more. You're right. Please explore her. She's such an incredible woman. It makes you like love her work even more.
You said something at the top of the show that I think we need to revisit to really tie a bow on this bee, close some circles, and get out of here. And that is, I think you said it perfectly when you said studying the life of Leonora Carrington, studying the life and times and works will help you ultimately learn how to follow your own bliss. I thought that was very poetic. So guys, follow your bliss. Follow your own bliss. And again, guys, I want to thank you for listening as always. And I want to thank my guest, Miss Alexandra Parsons of Alexandra_Parsons. Before we get out of here, for realsies, we got a little extra for you. A little icing on the cake, a little cherry on top with what we call the gem of the week. Before we talk gems, guys, let's talk sponsors. Today's gems are brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is our go-to tool for remote podcast recordings. What's great is that you can record separate audio and video tracks, and it's all backed up on a secured cloud, so you never lose your hard work. Even better, it's easy to use, and there's nothing to download. So go to their website, zencastr.com. Use promo code Art of the Beholder, all one word, and get 30% off your first 3 months with the pro account. Now back to the gems. I actually have a lot. I realize Jesus tap dancing Christ. It has been a while.
I never heard that before.
Jesus tap dancing Christ. It has been a while since we've done an actual topical show like this, where we've had room for gems at the end. We've been doing interviews and we're so professional. We've been doing interviews and quick cuts and Is It Art episodes. But of course, we got to give you these long form topical shows where we do little gems at the end. So I'm not gonna gush on all these. I'm gonna give you the hard facts. I'm gonna give you what I like, and then I want you to give us what you got. Gems include Super Mario Brothers Wonder. I think I talked about it, but it's not an official gem. Now it is. You're welcome. Killers of the Flower Moon. Finally saw that. Fucking excellent. God damn you, Scorsese. You're a fucking auteur genius. Killer Mike's new album, Michael, from your homeland, Atlanta. Love me some Killer Mike. Love me some Run the Jewels. Lorraine, another musical artist you guys should check out. Stand-up comic Rory Scovel just put out a new hour special on HBO. Excellent. And I finally got around to seeing this comedy film called Bottoms. It was released last year, 2023. It was I will give a little synopsis here. I've never seen a comedy that is a hybrid of a traditional teen comedy like Superbad, but with the gags and the non sequiturs and the things that just are there purely for odd, absurd satire, like Airplane. So it's like Airplane meets Superbad.
Nice.
And that is Bottoms, 2023. Miss Parsons, what do you got for
us? I don't think I have a lot.
Good. I had too many.
I'm like, do I even have one? I mean, Curb Your Enthusiasm new season's out.
Hey,
It's
that
my
counts.
husband.
Guys,
I love him.
you're
Larry
Larry
David's my
David?
husband. He just doesn't know it
Oh,
yet.
he just doesn't know it yet. Well, Larry, I don't know if you knew this. Larry's a huge fan of the
Also,
show.
look
So,
up OJM, Old Jewish Men on Instagram. My friends
okay.
are affiliated
Interesting.
with that
There you go.
group.
There's
That's
a
a good
gem.
gem. And
That's a good
in
gem.
the newest episode of Larry David is wearing some OGM shorts that they produced. It's hilarious. It's just like old Jewish New York men, and I am not Jewish. Everyone thinks I'm Jewish. I wish I was Jewish, but you interviewed Willie Zabar, one of my very good friends.
Mr. Willie
So
Zabar.
we have
Yeah.
some. So he's affiliated with them. He's like a classic, like New York Jewish royalty because they own Zabars, and they're all like, it's a really funny Instagram, and they like honor Larry David a lot too. So that's my jam. There you go.
We found it.
Thank
Guys,
you.
we found
Yeah.
it. Now, before we get out of here, again, I've been saying that too much. I'm going to cut that out. Miss Parsons, how do they get a hold of you?
Go onto my Instagram. So it'll be easier for you to click onto my website, Alexandra_Parsons. But Instagram is Alexandra dash. Is that what it is? Parsons.
I thought it was
underscore
Parsons.
Alexandra_Parsons.
Oh God, we don't even
No,
know, and we're plugging things we
I'm
don't know.
dyslexic. Everyone forgive me.
Guys, Instagram, Alexandra Parsons. Check her out, hire her, do all the things. If you like that, you can always check out our stuff too at novadayproductions.com. You can always follow us at _Novo_day and days DE and at Novaday Media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things. You know what to fucking do, okay? It's like internet etiquette. If you like it, you know what to do. And if you'd like to sponsor our little love child here or be on the show, you can reach out to us at novadaymedia@gmail.com. So until next time, guys, you know what to do. Be good to each other. We'll see you in the next one. And as always, good luck and Godspeed. We love you.
Art of the Beholder is brought to you by Novo Day Productions. Created and hosted by Novo Day and the Novo Day Collective. Facebook.com/Novo Day Media, at Novo Day Media on Twitter and Instagram. Music by A Company. Facebook.com/ACOMusic123. ACO on Spotify. Logo designed by Tom Justice, JESTUS, of thejusticecompany.com, and executively produced by Clayton Anderson. All rights reserved.